Check out today's piece of fan art. It's Fairy Gawain, looking rather pleasant. Honestly, I like this art just as much, if not more, than the official thing in terms of style. The shading on that hair is very soft and detailed. Thank you so much, Kitsune Fire. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. Today I want to talk about polyamory, or as it relates to marriage, polygamy, and how this concept has been fantasized or sometimes discouraged within anime. To clarify, I'm specifically referring to situations in which at least one person has more than one lover in a relationship, in opposition to the monogamy that pervades over most modern cultures. The further we go back in time, the more we can see this sort of relationship normalized. Great rulers or wealthy nobles would have multiple wives or concubines, not only as a symbol of power, but also to forward a patriarchal need to produce male heirs. In Japan specifically, such practices were legal all the way up to the year 1945. Now, however, this setup is far more stigmatized, illegal in many places, relegated to the likes of religious cults or more conservative cultures. From a modern perspective, we tend to value lovers who are committed and devoted toward each other, seeing any attempts to spread that love among multiple partners as unfaithful or impure. At the same time, there's no shortage of fantasies involving threesomes, harems, or at the very least one eligible bachelor getting to choose from an ensemble of lovely suitors. Such experiences are idolized as signs of success, garnering envy from those yearning for such romantic and sexual liberation. With reality TV shows like The Bachelor and Bachelorette, as well as Too Hot to Handle, these ideas are certainly present in Western society, but Japan has its own flavor of fantasies presented through anime. The most iconic expression of polyamory in anime is the harem genre. Typically, it features a single guy, surrounded by or living with a cast of beautiful women, though it's worth noting that the otome genre more or less portrays this with the genders reversed. While I have no data to back this up, I feel it's safe to say that harem stories have the tendency to resonate with people who are lonely, unable to find a romantic partner of their own. Naturally, for the anime viewing public, this can be a broad demographic, especially with Japan and its declining birth rate. For someone struggling to find love, the idea of suddenly having the pick of various wonderful partners designed to fit varying tastes can be a dream come true. It's exactly because of this far-fetched nature that it works so well as escapist entertainment. Between them, however, harem anime vary in how they genuinely explore polyamory. For a great many of them, the romantic hijinks remain comedic fodder, ultimately endorsing one monogamous couple over the rest. Interactions are flirty or casual, intentionally avoiding full-on romantic confessions in favor of playing with an ambiguous status quo. Many times, the protagonist is completely clueless to the feelings the harem girls have for him. Other times, the harem aspect is contextualized as a service, such as having maidservants or hosts. Even so, without having to acknowledge it directly, harem anime do imply an idealized polyamorous setup. Women with different qualities and personalities share a living space, often competing for the affections of a man whom they all pursue. I say idealized because they conveniently look away from or underplay the more toxic elements polyamorous relationships struggle with. Perhaps a more expansive branch of anime to deal with this happens to be visual novels, specifically galgame or dating sims. Because these are interactive experiences, visual novels let players control the protagonist, choosing for themselves which girl to pursue. Generally, by speaking with one girl at the expense of the others, players can unlock that girl's route where they fall in love and find happiness together. Usually, even if you like all the girls, it's assumed that you have to play the game multiple times, seeing each girl's route as a separate timeline. Depending on the game, however, it's sometimes possible to pursue multiple girls simultaneously, and the way these routes play out can say a lot about their writer's thoughts on polyamory. For instance, in the Persona games, for every dateable girl, you get the choice of whether to stay friends or become lovers. You can do the latter for all the girls if you'd like, and somehow this works out for most of the game because you never openly declare your relationship status with anyone in the main story. On Valentine's Day, however, you're faced with rejecting all but one of the girls or facing their collective wrath. Once they discover your selfish setup, they confront you and, in a comedic tone, kick your ass for betraying them. While it's played for laughs, it does show how each of the girls in Persona want a monogamous relationship with you and consider your infidelity to be a betrayal of their feelings. After all, one of the greatest sins in a monogamous relationship is cheating, seeing it as a stain on the validity of love for daring to share it with multiple partners. While Persona explores this through comedy, visual novels like School Days take a more morbid approach. The game itself forces you into an act of infidelity to start off, but depending on your choices, you can make the situation increasingly worse. There are multiple bad endings that escalate from the protagonist's inability to stick to one girl, causing the other to suffer mental trauma that they answer through self-harm or bloody vengeance. These endings are so iconic that School Days' anime adaptation made its own original bad ending that Frankensteins them all into one devastating nightmare. Hey, nice boat. While edgy beyond all oblivion, relying on shock factor to entertain us, School Days serves as a sobering reminder that toying with people's emotions has consequences.
When will you learn that your actions have consequences?
Yet, even this eroge plays with the fantasy of dating both girls. It has 2 harem endings, one of which involves a threesome that gets both girls pregnant. They happily visit the main character on Christmas to surprise him with the news. I find it quite interesting what this implies about polyamory. Basically, depending on how you handle it, a polyamorous relationship can either be a wholesome celebration or a violent disaster. But what's the difference? Where is the line drawn between cheating and sharing? Perhaps it all depends on how such a relationship is established and fostered. One anime this season, Kanojo mo Kanojo, tries to address this very thing. Before I delve into it, however, I want to clarify that this anime is of course fictional and has no obligation to represent these themes in a realistic manner. Let fiction be fiction. That said, that doesn't mean we can't choose to compare fiction with reality in an attempt to gain deeper insight. And while Kanojo mo Kanojo is a romantic comedy, I think it does at least touch upon some of the reasons polyamory is often so frowned upon. Personally, I'm not the type of person who would ever approve of a polyamorous relationship, certainly not for myself. I've known attempts at polyamory to completely ruin certain relationships, and with how I view love, it would take some insanely rare circumstances for me to justify it. Still, I acknowledge that I'm just one person in this world with a specific upbringing. I could never say a truly sincere polyamory is impossible, but I sure as heck will point out why it's so abrasive when it comes to actual romance, and not just casual intercourse. The anime's MC, Naoya Mukai, appears to be a very devoted and satisfied boyfriend. In the first scene, that is. He's happily dating Saki, the girl of his dreams, after persistently confessing to her for years. When she jokingly tells him, "Just don't cheat on me," he breaks down, apologizing for his lack of affection. He vows to overwhelm her with so much love that she'll never doubt his fidelity. In turn, she takes this as a challenge, accepting his feelings despite how embarrassed it makes her. It's absolutely adorable and makes me want to root for them. Of course, this is immediately called into question in the next scene, where Naoya meets Nagisa Minase, a girl who's had a crush on him. On the school rooftop, Nagisa confesses to him, pulling out all the stops. No joke, it's one hell of a confession. To please him, she spent the last few months exercising, improving herself, and learning to cook. She offers him a fancy meal with expensive ingredients she bought with money from her part-time job. She's cute, kind, and most certainly deserving of the love she seeks. No single guy in his right mind would ever turn her down. But that's just it. Naoya is not single. Now, admittedly, I'm not someone who believes in soulmates. Relationships aren't fated or simply given to us. They're something we build. To that end, I don't personally think there's only one right person for any of us. Rather, what's important is that we choose to commit to someone, with the beauty of that relationship coming from the effort and progress put into it. I'm sure that, on some other timeline, I could form a relationship that's just as valid and beautiful as my current one, with another lover. In that regard, rejecting someone doesn't mean they aren't good enough or wouldn't have made a great partner. It simply means that you've already committed yourself to someone else, and that commitment is precious. Even for Nagisa, I'm sure she's looking for that same type of commitment exclusively toward her. Naoya gets a completely different idea, though. He thinks that because she would be such a great girl to date, the fact that he's already dating Saki may not actually matter. So instead of turning Nagisa down, he takes her along to ask Saki permission to date both girls at the same time. He introduces Saki to Nagisa and convinces her of how cute and amazing Nagisa is, to the point where Saki even jokingly says, "I would want to go out with her," prompting Naoya to propose his two-timing arrangement. As expected, Saki is not okay with the idea, asking if she's enough to satisfy him, to which he cruelly says, "You were, until yesterday." Saki's attitude and manner of clobbering Naoya tries to paint this as comedic, and honestly it kind of is, but in no way should we use that as an excuse not to take her feelings seriously. When Saki asks Nagisa why she'd be okay sharing a boyfriend, she reasons that she'd rather this arrangement than not date him at all. To her, it's a compromise and not the ideal. An act of desperation, if you will. Pressured by Nagisa's puppy dog eyes and Naoya's desperate begging, Saki submits to the idea, taking Naoya up on the bet that he'll be such an amazing boyfriend that she won't regret it. Then, to immediately complicate matters, Naoya arranges for both girls to live with him starting that same day. This is an absolute dumpster fire, and as a work of fiction, I'm enjoying this ridiculous dumpster fire. But that won't stop me from explaining what's wrong in all of this. One of the thoughts in my mind happens to be, is even bringing up a polyamorous relationship a sign of infidelity? Or worse, a sign that your love was never enough to begin with? Personally, I think so. This isn't a matter of a sexually open couple trying out group intercourse, or having urges about other people. Sometimes those can actually be a sign of intimacy and trust, and they aren't permanent. At the same time, however, it's fair to say that your romantic partner isn't responsible for satisfying all of your emotional needs. Sometimes you need time to hang out with friends, or by yourself even, but when it comes to having a lifelong partner, the entire point of a romantic love is to have someone you can cherish in a truly special manner. From Saki's perspective, she already had that with Naoya, and now she has to tolerate something she's not comfortable with. Even if she becomes comfortable with the arrangement over time, that doesn't change how this new relationship is only consensual on the surface. Her compliance is reluctant at best. Surely any polyamorous relationship worth defending would at least be built on unanimous consent, right? Well, after a bit of time living at Naoya's house, Saki seems to be slowly accepting and even appreciating parts of her new lifestyle. Nagisa is a great cook, making snacks as well as handling the household chores. Sure, there are perks to a collaborative living space, but love isn't defined by its perks. For instance, my wife and I aren't in love because I do the laundry and she cooks. While it's definitely a way of showing our love, it's expected that we would be in love without such things. The idea of Nagisa living with Naoya and Saki isn't inherently bad, especially if they had a compensatory motive for doing so. It's the idea that Naoya is treating both girls as his lovers that causes problems, chief among them being competition. If people can normally be anxious about their lovers cheating on or neglecting them, then I can only imagine how much more amplified those feelings can be when you know your partner isn't exclusively devoted to you. People might say they're okay with their partner being with other lovers, but oftentimes this simply isn't true. They may tolerate the polyamory, but deep down, each individual lover is hoping to be the best and claim all the attention as though it were monogamous. Jealousy can rage when one lover gets more attention than the others, and without truly confronting the situation for what it is, this can get toxic. Given how Saki's consent is only given reluctantly, the anime shows us exactly how this toxicity can manifest. Turns out that, while they were dating first, Saki and Naoya haven't actually had sex yet. We learn that Saki is sensitive and sentimental, doing research about intercourse to make sure she approaches it correctly. She's waiting for the right moment to lose her virginity, but as you might expect, what people consider to be the right moment varies. When Saki realizes Naoya and Nagisa might sleep together, she confronts Naoya about it, and he admits that not only is he interested, but he would honestly like to bed them in a threesome, something Saki hadn't even considered. She protests, and Naoya gives up on a three-way, only for Nagisa to admit that she'd be willing to if it meant being closer to him. It appears Nagisa is more sexually open than Saki, which in a shared relationship like this can put on unfair pressure. While Saki does want to sleep with Naoya, she wants to do it at her own pace, but the fear of losing to Nagisa may very well force her into it whether she's ready or not. The same can be said for any manner of kinks, or even platonic aspects of their relationship. Even if nobody says this directly, Saki may feel that anything she's not willing to do will hurt her appeal. She might miss out on being with Naoya because she isn't as willing and open as Nagisa. You could say this is a problem Saki is making for herself, but she's not the only one with it. For all we know, Nagisa may again be putting up with this because she's desperate for Naoya's love and sees no other option. At the very least, she also feels jealous. In her mind, should Naoya get tired of the arrangement, she will ultimately be the one kicked out. As such, she seeks an edge on the competition, even going as far as digging through Saki's phone for information to exploit. She too is scared of losing her appeal, worried that Naoya might find out she's bad at schoolwork. Then Naoya, in all of this, is extremely naive and incompetent at quelling any of this mistrust. He knows Saki doesn't like this, and yet he presses on while apologizing. Is there a possible way to make this work, or is Naoya just being a selfish prick in order to avoid commitment? One reason I say this is that he seems very unlikely to tolerate a reverse scenario. For instance, if he and some other guy were sharing the same girlfriend, he would have to be comfortable tolerating another man. If there were ever a time when he didn't want in on the intercourse, he would have to endure as his girlfriend and another man had sex. Perhaps he'd be okay with this, even having a kink for cuckolding, but we have to realize he's more or less asking the same thing from these girls. One of the only things easing this relationship is how Saki and Nagisa both seem to like each other. These bisexual undertones make polyamory more accessible. I imagine being sexually open like that really helps, and it would help even more if everyone in the relationship were in love with each other. Even then, however, the fear of competition, being left out, with everyone's insecurities bubbling to the surface, makes that task seem daunting. Monogamous couples have their own plethora of issues to deal with, but I feel those issues just multiply as you continue to add people to the mix. Turns out, this is exactly what Kanojo mo Kanojo intends to do, as the show features another 2 girls who join the harem. While I doubt this would ever become a bloodbath like School Days, the anime is showing us ways in which polyamory can be a genuine struggle. There is so much to unpack about this topic, but I feel I've said my piece for now. It's your turn to take over. What do you think of this anime? Have you ever fantasized about a polyamorous relationship? Are you in one? What kinds of struggles have you experienced or would you anticipate? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
Celebrate your fandom!